Our story starts with Francis Underwood, aka Frank, an ambitious Democratic congressman from South Carolina and House Majority Whip. Frank helps Garrett Walker become president in exchange for appointing Frank as Secretary of State, but Walker reneges on the deal at the last moment, nominating Michael Kern instead. Frank, obviously furious by this betrayal, makes a pact with his wife Claire, an environmental activist who runs a clean water nonprofit organization, to destroy the now President Walker. Frank starts by recruiting Peter Russo, a troubled representative who has been arrested for drunk driving with a prostitute, to help take down the president. Frank offers to get Russo out of hot water with the cops in exchange for his loyalty, which Russo accepts. After this, we meet Zoe Barnes, a young political reporter from the Washington Herald newspaper. Zoe, hungry for success, decides to befriend Frank, who agrees to work with her by leaking incriminating information about his political opponents, thus helping Frank and advancing Zoe's career. Frank plants a story that loosely ties Michael Kern, Secretary of State nominee, to an anti-Israeli editorial column that was printed in his college newspaper while Kern was there. Frank and Russo convince someone who wrote for that college newspaper to say that Kern wrote the article, thereby destroying Kern's chances at becoming Secretary of State. Frank, determined to get the education bill signed into law, starts to manipulate members of the House with elaborate string pulling. The bill, however, has undergone changes that the teachers' union vows to fight. President Walker instructs Frank to change the education bill to get the teachers to end their strike. Frank concocts a scenario that leads to Spinella punching Frank in the face. Frank then uses this scenario to get the upper hand on Spinella, telling him to end the strike or face felony charges. President Walker signs the education bill into law, earning Frank a major victory, affording him influence and power. Russo goes on a tour in Pennsylvania to get people to support the new environmental bill, while Frank tries to whip support in Congress. Frank requests Claire, who has experience with this, to help offer justification, but Claire instead causes the bill to fail by colluding with Remy Danton behind Frank's back. Russo, having failed to get support for the environmental bill in Frank's eyes, decides to play his own hand, fearing retribution from Frank. Russo threatens to reveal a conspiracy that took down Kern. Fearing what Russo could do, Frank devises a plan to get Russo, an alcoholic, drunk, and ultimately leaves him to die of carbon monoxide poisoning. Meanwhile, Frank convinces current VP Matthews to give up his office to run for governor of Pennsylvania. While Frank helps President Walker look for his replacement, Walker sends Frank to meet with an old friend, Raymond Tusk, who it turns out is vetting Frank for the job of vice president. After Frank and Tusk go back and forth playing political games, Tusk eventually recommends Frank to the president and becomes the next vice president of the United States.